breaking the loop of breaking the fear loop. Listen, when fear becomes a lifestyle, listen, fear isn't just a feeling, it's a familiar pattern. And it's really time to take it's time to break the cycle. Okay, listen, this session or this lesson today really dives into the unconscious habits that fear has built into your routines. All right, from overthinking to avoidance, we all do it, right? So today's lesson is really here to help you recognize the repeating patterns and paradigms that really keep you on autopilot and give and the whole idea is to give you the tools to disrupt them. All right, so the focus of today's life lesson is about identifying fear-based patterns that have become your normal. All right, that has become your normal, and really learning how to disrupt that loop, um disrupt the loop that's been stealing your momentum, that's been stealing your voice, and that's been stealing, guess what, your clarity. All right, listen, we all have felt fear before. All right, we all have felt fear. um this conversation is really about how do I step back and remember fear is like a sneaky thing, right? It just sneaks in. It's not something that we ordinarily say like I'm scared. It's the tactics, it's the sophistication in how we move and control things. So let's get honest. All right, are you really being cautious, or have you gotten comfortable in this fear loop? All right, fear doesn't always come loud, you guys. It doesn't always scream out loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it whispers, just think about this a little longer. Sometimes it whispers, let's pray, right? Let's pray a little bit more. Let's pray one more time, right? Or it'll say, you're not quite ready yet, right? You still need more. You still need to read a little bit more. You still need to do a little bit more. Okay. Fear doesn't always come loud, all right? So today's life lesson is really here to help you spot that autopilot habit that fear has created, to really rewire those patterns that are shrinking your life and really replace fear-based rhythm with what? With alignment. All right, listen, you don't have to feel fearless to break the loop. You just have to choose a new path, all right, on purpose. So before my stream got disconnected, right? This living on purpose, we have caught a lot of residue, right, from our communities, from our parents, right, from society, and we really have to start living on purpose, right? We really have to start moving on purpose and showing up on purpose. So I want you to ask yourself, what is one fear-based pattern that you have normalized in your day-to-day life? Okay. Is it overthinking? All right. Is it delayed decision? Right? Is it shrinking in rooms that require your voice? All right. I want you to have the courage to drop that or write it down. Right. And then when you write it down, scratch it off. All right. Listen, what loop are you ready to disrupt? And what truth are you willing to replace that with? Again, I'm gonna remind you, you're not lazy. All right, you're not lazy. You are patterned, right? You are patterned and you are looped. All right. So let's write a new theme and let's do that together, right? As a community. So July's theme is all about, why do I keep holding back? All right. It's trying to answer this question, or the intention of it is to answer this question: why am I holding back? So the theme for this month is all about release and rise. All right. And the R in rise is for really releasing the grip of fear. All right. Our core focus for this series is really letting go of fear, people pleasing, guilt, and perfectionism. All right. Really stepping into our divine security, our spiritual security, helping us to really regulate our nervous system and create that identity shift that we so desire. All right. Again, releasing the grip from fear. Stop rehearsing worst case scenarios and really start reclaiming what? Your peace. Okay. Really start reclaiming your peace. Because what if the fear that you're trying to manage isn't about a moment, but it's a lifestyle? What if you haven't just been feeling afraid, but you've been living in fear of change? All right. Or you've been living like fear is in charge. All right. And you don't even know it, right? You're living like fear is in charge because every time you go to do something, and every time you think to do something, you're like focused on the outcome. You're trying to control the outcome, right? Why? To avoid a feeling, right? To avoid an experience. All right. And we have to learn to fall in love with the process. All right. Fall in love with the process of, I'm going to have some good days. I'm going to have some bad days, but I am going to have forward movement. On the last session, I was talking about how you're expanding, right? Your life is expanding, you're growing, you're evolving, right? Now, you get a free will, though, to stay in the corner of the room, right? So you are expanding every day, right? Your life is expanding, you're growing. How do I know this? Because nature shows us this. The flower that you planted yesterday is a little bit more ready to bloom today. Okay. The leaves on the trees, they're a little bit larger, right? The blades of grass, they're grown a little bit, right? They have a little bit more length on them. Okay. So everything in life has a growth cycle. All right. So are you growing with that cycle, with your cycle of growth, or are you allowing fear to hold you back? Why am I having this session on today? Because I've learned, or I've lived in the loop, right? Where I technically wasn't stuck, but I was repeating the same cycles, right? The hesitation, the control, and delay. And maybe you have too, right? I know a lot of my clients have. So I want this lesson to really give you some language for this fear loop and the permission to what? To exit it, to get out of it, right? To break it. All right. So the disclaimer on today is that this session isn't about blaming yourself for old patterns or anything like that. It's or for old habits. It's about awakening to the truth, right? Repetition becomes your reality. All right. When fear becomes routine, it writes a rhythm into your nervous system. But here's the good news. You can break the cycle on purpose. All right. So good afternoon. It's lunchtime, right? We probably ate already, had our conversations, woke up, right? Right. And it's our time, no pressure, just your presence. All right. I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons with Dr. Sheila Little, licensed master social work and the creator of the Stop and Now method. The Stop and Now method was really created to get you to stop doing the things that is preventing you from having the life that you desire and deserve. What are those things? The things you say, the things you believe, right? All of that stuff that's really getting in the way of you, right? The you that you need to be. I always say that people say, I need to get on my own way. And I'm like, no, you need to get in the way, right? You need to activate this part of you. All right. So I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons. Life Lessons is a part of the Project Life. And Project Life is this initiative where I am attempting, all right, to turn theory into practice. Why? Because you're on social media and you asking ChatGPT questions and you're listening to all of these things, right? And it's really about how does that apply to my life? All right. How does that apply to my life? And so having these life lessons are really kind of my attempt to have these bite-sized recipes, BYTES, right? For you to really start this self transformation, this transmutation of energy, this healing journey, right? Or really give you some information and language. So if you wanted to change, if you wanted to see a therapist, like you would have went through this self-discovery stage, right? Of, oh, okay, that's me. You know what you're going to seek help for. All right. So I want you to drop a word in the chat and describe how are you feeling today? And if you want to challenge yourself, describe a loop that you've been trying to break, either emotionally, mentally, or physically. All right. So a loop that I've been trying to break emotionally, mentally, or physically. Yeah, I think it's a work loop, right? I feel like I love the process of building a business that makes a difference in my life, in the life of the people that I serve, right? And what I find myself doing is just like in that loop of work, right? Like I'm working all the time, right? Which sometimes could be, or I'm creating all the time. It's more creating, right? So I'm creating life lessons, I'm creating programs, I'm creating solutions for people. And so sometimes I have to consciously say, you know what? Go out on a date, right? Go to lunch, right? Go do this. So we ended up going and watching Superman last night. I enjoyed it. Went with my boys and we had a good time. But if there was one word to describe a loop I was trying to break, it's probably this creation loop, right? Where I'm creating all the time and really sitting back and being with some of the projects that I have created, right? And this initiative, Project Life, is one of the largest projects that I've stayed with. Because before this, it was like if something didn't work or if I didn't get the feedback or whatever, I'm like, oh, I need to tweak it or I need to do something different. And so this project, like coming on every day, the same format, right? Just doing it and getting it very much in a mundane way, right? Like where I'm saying the same thing. I'm got a pattern that I'm following, and I noticed that is definitely breaking, right, a lot of my beliefs. Okay. All right. So what's one word for you? And if I have to drop a word in the chat of how I'm feeling today, I'm feeling fulfilled. I'm feeling fulfilled on this Saturday. This is a special show, right? Today and tomorrow. I had some technical issues earlier, trying to post, and then once I did the show, you saw the technical issues. Had some technical issues on yesterday, and so I want to get through this series. So drop a word in the chat. Listen, let's give present in our bodies just for about 30 seconds, right? We know a part of this project is just really getting present, right? Feeling your feet on the floor, butts in your seat if you're standing, feeling your legs, right? Just taking a conscious breath on this Saturday. Just consciously coming together. I think that when we can get present, right, it's a great way to reset, right, and to really co-regulate ourselves. So let's just get present in the body again, feeling our feet on the floor, our butts in the seat, up the spine, right, just feeling each vertebrae of the spine, right, and if you can feel it kind of straighten up, right, giving some love, some compassion to our organs that's doing the work for us. Like I don't even got to do nothing to breathe, to digest my food, right? My stomach is releasing acid. So just bringing some thank yous and some gratitude into that, right? Coming up to the heart, if you're feeling some pressure, on your chest, or just, some heartbreak, or, some concern or something like that, giving time just for that to be with that, right? And feel it. And then if you want to challenge yourself, think about it as like an ice cube, right? And now it's melting, right? That is melting away from you, because a lot of things we can't change, right? Right. And a part of us trying to control it, right, is holding on to it, right? Holding on to it. But let's kind of feel that melt away from us, right? Just kind of melting, right? Okay. Up our neck, really clearing our throat chakra. A lot of us, this is an energy field, and a lot of us don't speak our truth because we have a blocked chakra. And a lot of that blockness is because we either been told not to speak, right? We've been told what we said was, in some way wrong, right? And so we're trying to figure out the right thing to say, not realizing that it's really blocked. So let's again see that ice cube kind of melt there so we can start speaking our truth, right? Standing in our truth and things like that. Up our face, right? Our lips, our nose, right? Our eyes, right? Activating that third eye, right? That center of our brain, just getting present in our mind, right? Activating our brains on this Saturday, not to work, but just to be. All right, just to be. And if there is some residue of work or some things we need to do, again, just imagine that ice cube just kind of melting, right? Right? You're solid up there. It's a lot to process, right? Emotionally, it's a lot to digest. And let's just imagine it just being like an ice cube, and it's just melting, and you can see it melting. All right. Top of our heads. All right. And then the space around us. Let's just give some presence for the space around us and just whisper to ourselves, I love you. All right. Even if you don't believe it, even if you're going through something, right? Just a small whisper, I love you. Here's the thing about life. You get what you give. All right. And we often think about giving to other people. All right. We often think about giving to other people. And I want to challenge that, right? As you give to you, so shall you receive too. You are part of the giving. All right. So giving yourself compliments, giving yourself love, giving yourself compassion, right? Practicing that. Because when you give it to you, then it's easier to give to other people, right? And when you give it to you, you're not so angry at other people for not giving it to you, right? Because they can only give you what you give you, right? There's a match that has to be there. So let's give ourselves some love, some compassion, some forgiveness, right? Some forgiveness on today. All right. We've ended the week. It's Saturday. All right. We're probably going to go out and club later on. I know it's my friend's birthday today. So I know I'm going to do some shenanigans with her, right? Right. We can live this life, and your life can have range, right? We don't have to be stuck in one way of being on today. All right. All right. Drop a heart in the chat if that felt good. All right. So, who is this session for on today? This session is for you. If you keep repeating the same avoidance habits, right? You feel like you live on autopilot, stuck in overthinking and delay and in doubt, and you're exhausted from planning more than you are living, right? So, you find yourself planning and planning and replanning and replanning and have writing to-do lists and all of that, but you're not really activating. All right. So this is for you. If you're ready to really stop letting fear lead your lifestyle, Listen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay. Here's our quote for today. All right, here's our quote for today. Today, fear doesn't always shout, you guys, it loops. All right. So fear doesn't always shout, it loops. And if you don't break that pattern, it becomes your personality. The thing, right? We don't make our habits make us. All right. We don't, I'm sorry. First we make our habits and then our habits make us. And a lot of us are patterned, right? We're patterned, we're repeating the same thing over and over and over again. All right. And a big part of what we're repeating is these fear-based loops, right? The way we do things, how we activate, when it's time to change, when it's time to move, right? Fear says, do you really want to do that? Right? Is that something we're really going to do? All right. So let's discuss today's life lesson. Listen, fear isn't just about feeling, it's a rhythm. All right. Life is a rhythm. And if that rhythm becomes normal, guess what? You don't even question it. All right. If the rhythm that you start to live becomes normal, you don't even question it anymore. Right. And here is the thing that's coming up in my spirit. And sometimes this rhythm of fear was a rhythm that you caught. Right. So it's the rhythm of your grandmother. It's the rhythm of your mother, right? It's the rhythm of your father, right? And it's so normal to you because you grew up in that rhythm that you unconsciously picked it up. So today we're going to shine a light on this fear-based autopilot and really give you the tools, right, to exit this loop. And again, this is why we can't really blame ourselves, and we have to kind of have some compassion. Why? Because a lot of the stuff that we do, just by the mere sake of how we are created, we caught it. Right. I don't know if you've ever been talking to your kids or something like that, and you hear your mama voice like, oh, I remember my mama used to say that. Right. The very thing that you didn't when you was younger, didn't like her to say. And now you're saying it to your kids. So again, we all have a rhythm, right? Now, the choice is, are you going to create your own rhythm? Right? Are you going to continue to live by the rhythm that you either caught or taught, right? That was taught to you or that you caught. Why did you catch it? To survive, right? That is what the nervous system is there for. So a lot of the fear-based thinking was your way of survival, right? It was your way of making it through, right? It was a protective thing. But in life, as you expand, right, and as you grow, you notice that it's I always say, the very wall you built to keep people out now is the very wall that you got to climb to get out of, right? So the very blocks and the boundaries and the walls and things like that you're saying, hey, I can't trust this, or, don't do this. Now you're feeling like, I want to connect again. Or maybe it's not, I want to connect again, but you're feeling lonely. You're feeling isolated because you built up a wall. Now you got to go and tear that wall down. All right. And that's your work. All right. So here's my anchoring question for you today. What is a loop? What old loop is God asking you to step out so that you can perceive the new thing, so that you can experience the new thing, so that you can have a new thing? All right. What is your divinity asking you to stop out of so that you can experience that? Listen, on day one, we talked about when fear becomes your author, all about stories and triggers, right? I helped you to identify the inner script of fear that fear has been writing. All right. And then I brought to your awareness how your past experiences, your trauma, your survival conditions have shaped your narrative of hesitation. So we know the why. All right. The challenge was for you to pick up a pen and really start writing from identity, from your wise person and not your trauma. All right. So on day one, the goal and the intention was to help you see the story, right? To see the hesitation story, to see the fear story, right? And how that connects to the day is how often have you been repeating that story on autopilot once you recognized it, right? And then the second session was about the cost of playing small, right? The cost of playing small, that fear isn't for free, right? And we talked about the obstacles and opportunity costs, right? And I exposed you to the emotional, spiritual, and energetic price of letting fear stall your movement, all right? My intention was to introduce you to the concept of fear-based delay. That fear-based delay has a what? A high cost decision, is a high cost decision, all right? Not just this harmless pause, right? Now, in that, I also told you that God ain't punishing you, all right? But the delay, what you could be experiencing right now, you may now have to experience that next year because you hesitated, right? And you're feeling that. This is what we call a temporal punishment, right? So you may be living in some shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? At the expense of allowing fear to be your driver, all right? I challenge you to name what fear has been costing you. All right. The impact of that, has it been costing you? Has it been costing you impact, growth, connection? Has it been costing you your peace? All right. And how that connects to today's session is that the delay is costing you more than you thought. All right. So that delay may be costing you more than you thought. So, how this session, or how has the delay become a lifestyle, a loop? I want you to ask yourself in a default, right? So you're delaying, delaying, delaying. And how has that become a lifestyle, a loop, or a default? And then today we're breaking that loop when fear becomes a lifestyle. And we know what a lifestyle is, right? You do it without thinking, right? It's the habits, right, that you create, right? And we all have a lifestyle. We may have a laissez-faire lifestyle where we just like don't care, right? We may have a high performance lifestyle, but we all have a lifestyle. And know that either your faith is a guiding force in this lifestyle, or your fear, right, is a guiding force in this lifestyle. So today is all about your patterns and paradigms. And remember what a paradigm is. A paradigm is the lens that we see life through, right? And all of us have a paradigm. All of us have a lens that we experience life through. That's just how the brain was built. And if you took my emotional intelligence course, and I really encourage you to, right, I talk about those four paradigms, right? The victim paradigm, the duty paradigm, the achievement paradigm, and ultimately move into the integrity paradigm where you're living in your truth. Okay. So in this session, now we can name the habits and the rhythms that fear has really built into your daily life, right? It's no longer about recognizing the narratives or identifying the cost, right? It's about interrupting the cycle. A cycle that, again, you probably didn't start, right? You probably caught it from your friends, from your network, from your job. You know, how many of you started a job, and as a consequence of the job, you had to shift and change your lifestyle? All right. This session is all about moving from awareness to accountability, right? Because either you causing it, you allowing it, or you participating in it. Okay. As this grown age of adult, all right, accountability, and then action. All right. So today, this isn't that today. I want you to actually to say, this isn't who I am. It is what I've repeated, and I get to stop the cycle. All right. I get to stop the cycle. All right. All right. So on Monday, again, we talked about writing your story. And today we asked, what pattern have you unknowingly repeated that really makes fear your lifestyle, not just a moment? All right. I had a client that said, I didn't even realize I had a morning routine of doubt. I would wake up, overthink. I would rehearse everything that could go wrong and delay what I needed to do and call it all preparation, right? If you read my book, The Dream That Broke Me Down and Stand Me Up, I talk about this, right? I talk about how there was a time in my life before I left the house, I would pray, right? And my prayer was so focused on the enemy, right? Protect me from the enemy, right? Protect me from my naysayers. Give me the strength to get through the day, right? Like it was all resistance based, right? So I'm praying to God in a sense to put this armor on me, right, so that the negativity that I was going to experience that day, that I could in some way endure it, right? And I did endure it. But what that did was it created a weight. So what I noticed, that it was very challenging for me to gain momentum, right? Because I'm so paying attention to the naysayers and like the negative things that was going to happen. And I was praying God to cover me through that. But guess what? That's what I saw, right? So what that was allowing me to do is shift my paradigm to, in this sense, victim stage, right? Or this duty. What do I do when they say this? And this very much defending, my work and my path and who I am. And I had to take that armor off, and I had to start doing an intentional prayer to God. God, before I leave this house, connect me with the people that I should be connected with. Allow me to see the blessings, right? Allow me to be able to pause and feel the wind on my face. Allow me to be able to create and feel good, right? So my intention shifted. Right. What that meant is that it wasn't that the naysayers wasn't there. It wasn't that the negative things wasn't happening. But what I was able to do was shift my focus to all the good that was happening. Because remember, in life, there's the duality. There's the contracting and the expansion. All right. There's the up and the down. There's the left and the right. There's the good and the bad. And I had to truly sit down and say, what is it that you want to be paying attention to? And what is it that you want to be experiencing? All right. And with that, I was able to truly help this client, and hopefully with that story help you. What are you praying for? Like if you're praying to God to help you get over the negativity, your prayer is answered. But you still feel unfulfilled. You know why? Because you're paying attention to the corner of the room, right? The things that may go bad, and you noticing that you're resilient and you getting through that. But you also are not experiencing the things that you want to experience, and you wondering, well, I pray every day, and I'm asking God for covering, and I'm asking God for this, right? And you're talking to God about everything you don't want to experience, and you have yet to have a conversation with God about the things you do. And what you think that you're doing when you're talking to God about the things that you don't want to experience is you think that that is having a conversation with God about the things you do want to experience, and it's not, right? Your brain is the most unconscious part of you, right? And it moves through language, right? So you can't say, I don't want to go left, thinking that your brain is interpreting that means I want to go right. All right. You need to be affirming in your actions, in your words, right? So instead of saying, I don't want to go left, the language is, I want to go right. All right. I don't want to experience hurt. The language is, I want to experience connection, joy, fulfillment, right? But when we start to speak in this very affirming space that sometimes fear stops us from speaking in, we become vulnerable. We become susceptible to change, right? We become expansive, right? And I talked about this maybe in the third life lesson series, right? This fear of expansion, because now these emotions that I want to experience are expansive emotions, right? So love is an expansive emotion. Joy is an expansive emotion. When I'm saying expansive, it is. It's outward, right? And so that opens you up to this feeling of vulnerability that sometimes we misinterpret as anxiousness. Sometimes we misinterpret it as overwhelmed, right? So a lot of times we're not asking for that, or when we go to experience it, fear jumps in like, oh, this person being too nice, or life is going too good, or, I don't want to get used to this because, what if the bad thing happens? And I encourage people, and I tell people all the time, the bad thing is going to happen, right? And good things are going to happen too, right? The leaves, they bloom, but then they leave, right? The trees are bare for a season, right? So there is going to be a season of a drought. There is going to be a season of pain. There is going to be this season of all of that. But that's why the Bible also says, count it all joy, right? And why are you counting it joy? Because, even in the bad parts of your life, or the dis-ease part of your life, or in the frustration, right, that God is with you. All right. So you're not going through it alone. All right. So again, my client said that I didn't even realize I had a morning routine of doubt. I will wake up, overthink, rehearse everything that could go wrong, delay what I needed to do, and call it all preparation. That's what we call fear-based rhythm. All right. And we all probably have been caught up in it. Now that's not loud, but it is lethal, because it's taken away from you every day, or it's gearing you in a direction that I promise you don't want to be led. All right. So here's our mirror check-in, or our heart check-in, right? Our mirror moment. I want you to pause. All right. And I want you to think about what's one fear-based pattern that started to feel like your personality. And when I say started to feel like your personality, this is just who I am. I'm just not a friendly person. This is just who I am. I'm just not a trusting person. This is just who I am. I just don't talk about my feelings. This is just who I am, right? So this fear-based pattern, now you have identified with it so much that you feel like it's part of your personality. And that's not who you are. You are beautifully, wonderfully made. You are a communicator. You are a creator. How do I know that? Because the Bible say he gave you 2 rules, right? Be fruitful and multiply, right? Be fruitful and multiply. That means you give, right? The seed that was planted in you is going to grow, and then you give it. All right. So there is no restriction in you in that way, but you have created yourself to be restrictive, right? That's just who I am. I'm just not a trusting person. No, that's not who you are. That's who you became, right? That's a part of your structure now, right? Because of what you experienced, and you can experience something different. So here's 5 truths that I want you to know. Repetition becomes identity. All right. The more you repeat fear, the more your brain calls it normal, right? That's why you keep identifying with it, right? And again, that's just who I am. I don't trust people. Guess what? That is fear. Because why don't you trust people? Well, because I ain't got time for people to be getting down, hurting me. Also, you expect perfect people. You expect people to not be human. You expect when people come into your life that they are supposed to perform in a way, in this way, to be your emotional bodyguard, right? So they can't do anything that's going to make you feel uncomfortable. So these people are responsible for how you feel. And if they do anything to disrupt your feeling, right, or make you feel away, then you can't trust them, right? People get it wrong all the time. I get it wrong. You've gotten it wrong, and I'm going to continue to get it wrong. I'm not perfect, right? You're not perfect. My clients aren't perfect, right? Right? We're not perfect, right? But we do the best we know how to do with the information we have. And we have to learn how to give people an opportunity to be human and to be who they are. But a lot of us, again, our repetition develops identity, and you have identified as a person that no new friends, you know, I ain't talking to this person because they toxic or this and that, right? We label and we judge, right? All along we feel isolated, disconnected, that the world is on our shoulder, that nobody really understands the burdens that we're going through, not realizing that we're creating our own circumstances. All right. All right. Number 2, your nervous system memorizes fear. Okay. Overthinking, avoidance, and delay becomes muscle memory. All right. Until you actively disrupt it. All right. So again, overthinking, avoidance, and delay becomes muscle memory. What is muscle memory? When you do a thing enough, it trains your muscles. We hear about muscle memory with working out, right? So if a person used to be an athlete or something like that, when they go back to the gym, their muscle remember that. So they may get lean faster, right? Because it's embedded in the emotion. We have muscle memory. And when we have went through a traumatic experience, and whatever that trauma is, I always simply put trauma is the time you felt unsafe, right? A time where you felt unsafe, all right? Either physically unsafe, emotionally unsafe, sexually unsafe, environmentally unsafe, right? Psychologically unsafe, right? All of those times have the potential to imprint a trauma, right? And a trauma is a range of things. So we have people who experience severe trauma, right? Labeled severe trauma, right? And we call those and we diagnose those as mental illnesses, right? A lot of those. And then we have just trauma, right? The trauma of being at home by yourself, being a latchkey kid, right? And making sure all the doors were closed, and making sure nobody wasn't going to get in the house. And if somebody came, right, your mama told you don't open the door, but you see auntie at the door, knocking on the door. And you like, I can't let auntie in, but I'm scared if I let her in, I'm going to get in trouble, right? All of that could have imprinted this feeling of fear, right? Or this feeling of lack of protection, or what do I do, right? So something as simple as that can have created a trauma. Being the oldest child and having to take care of all the kids and what that did to your brain and how it imprinted your brain, right? But as this grown age of adult, guess what? You get to rewrite your life, right? And with the understanding that I do have a muscle memory, though, of this trauma, right? And so I have to consciously stay more present, more active in my life, right? Because that muscle memory is there. All right. So again, overthinking, avoidance, and delay become muscle memory until we actively disrupt it. All right. Because your nervous system memorizes fear. All right. Your nervous system is keeping count for all these 40 years, 30 years, 25 years, 60 years, 70 years, right, of your existence, not just yours, but your ancestors as well. All right. Number 3, disruption is more powerful than motivation. Disruption is more powerful than motivation. Say that 3 times because I want to say it to the people in the back of the room. Like, you don't need to feel inspired. You need to interrupt the loop. And a lot of us is waiting to feel inspired to do something or to feel more. I can't wait till I get motivated so I can do my closet. No, I can't wait to get motivated so I can start working out. No, you're in a loop. You're in a loop that's causing you not to do these things. And you just need to disrupt that loop. You just need to get up and do it. Right. And then the energy that you're looking for, the motivation that you're looking for, the connection that you're looking for, the fulfillment that you're looking for is on the other side, right, of the activity. But disruption is more powerful than motivation. So let's start being disruptors of our life, right? I consider myself a disruptor, not just of my life, but in the lives of the people that I serve, the clients that I work with. Oh, we disrupting a lot of stuff, right? That's just not true. Where did you learn that at? Right? Right. Which is, again, a big part of why I moved from a therapist to a coach, right? Because in therapy, there's a little bit more tactic that's used to really help the individual, move through that process. And as a coach, there's a little bit more room to have more communication, in my opinion. All right. Number 4, awareness is the first disruption, right? So you can't change a loop that you won't name. This is where truth becomes the highest frequency. All right. So we think love is, but actually truth is the highest frequency. And a lot of us are not being honest. All right. Are not being honest. Honest is another form of awareness. Like, I'm aware that of this thing. And now that I'm aware of this thing, right now, the other thing is, the other thing after awareness is acceptance. All right. I was talking to a client yesterday and she was going through a situation and she was like, it's just hard for me to process that. And I said, is it hard for you to process that, or is it hard for you to accept that? Right. So a lot of us, we become aware of information. We become aware of things in our life. And it's not that, and it's sometimes we're like, oh, it's hard for me to process that. It's just hard for me to, no, is it hard for you to accept it? All right. Because once we can accept a lot of stuff in our life, right, we can then interrupt the loop. All right. Because you can't change a loop that you won't name. Naming it is becoming aware. Once you become aware, then that positions you to disrupt it. And that disruption absolutely requires you to be active. All right. To activate. All right. And then last, and for this section, you don't have to change the whole pattern, just the next decision. All right. Transformation starts with one intentional interruption. Right. What's coming up in my spirit is like a braid, braids. If you haven't got braids, like these 3 strands that's kind of tied together. All right. Now, one thing about this braid is that you can't, when you're trying to take down a braid, you can't just start in the middle and try to, like, it's just not going to work. Right. In a sense, you got to start at the bottom and you got to like kind of unbraid it, right? Unravel it, right? Piece by piece. Or if you think about chords, right, that have been all jumbled up, right? You can't just try to pull the chords apart. You got to find one chord and kind of unravel it through all the little loops and things like that. And a lot of us are trying to make these big dramatic changes. Like, I'm going to, all these chords are intersected, they tie, life is braided together, right? This trauma is woven in with your growth, with your healing, these relationships, all of this stuff is braided. You understand that something needs to change. And what you want to do is, one, either cut the whole braid off from the at the root. You want to just, cut the cord. You want to, in a sense, create, I'm gonna say in that case, more harm, right, than just taking your time, right? One intentional move at a time, one intentional interruption at a time, right? And just slowly unbraiding. And then when you get to a certain point, guess what? It loosens, right? And then you can move it and move it. But in the beginning, it's these intentional steps, these intentional interruptions. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. And if you enjoyed that session, put a 1 in the chat for me. All right. Listen, fear isn't just felt, it's rehearsed, you guys, because what you repeat becomes what you believe, and what you believe actually starts to shape what you allow. Hey Dale. All right. What you allow. If you don't name the loop, you'll normalize it and live right below your alignment. Okay. I had a testimony from one of my clients that said, once I stopped calling it overthinking and named it fear, I got my peace back. Right. Because when I can name it what it is, like, oh, I'm just an overthinker, that feels very that's a rational lie, right? That's a good rationalization, right? I'm just an overthinker. But if I say I'm scared, or there's some fear around this, guess what? Naturally the body is going to want to overcome it. What are you scared of? What is that? Right. There's going to be a deeper conversation and kind of more curiosity. But a rational lie can say, I'm just an overthinker. And that's allowing you to stay in the loop. All right. Research shows, neuroscience confirms that habitual thoughts, right? Habitual thought patterns actually create automatic emotional responses, but these responses can be rewired through intentional behaviors and language shifts. So again, when I talked about that language shift earlier, instead of saying I don't want to go left, right? The language shift is I want to go right. Instead of saying I don't want to hurt anymore, the language shift is I want to experience more connection. I want to experience more trust. I want to experience, more joy. I want to experience more happiness, with the understanding that when you move from a contracting conversation, which is what I don't want, to an expansive conversation in your language, just expanding is going to feel different, right? You're going to feel, it's kind of like, you know, being on a roof, right? It's kind of like this very airy space, because when you speak in the affirming, right, it's actually creating and building momentum, and transmuting energy, right, for you. All right. So you don't have to master fear. You just have to stop rehearsing it. All right. You don't have to master fear, but you do have to stop rehearsing these same patterns. All right. So we know that today's conversation is all around patterns and paradigms, breaking the loop when fear becomes a lifestyle. You guys, listen, fear doesn't just visit you. It starts to live in your daily routines, in your daily thoughts, in your daily habits, right? So this section of today's life lesson is really to help you recognize how fear disguises itself, right, as your daily rhythm, or in your daily rhythm, right? So you can start rehearsing survival and really start building or rebuilding your alignment. So here's some expansive truths that I want you to know. Fear builds routine, not just reactions. Fear doesn't always hit like a wave, you guys. It seeps in slowly and forms habits. All right. So you don't, or you begin to organize your day around what makes you feel safe instead of what moves you towards purpose. Right. So again, when fear builds routines, not just reactions, what you will start to notice is that you start to even build how you meet people, how you talk or organize your day, right? To feel safe. And again, people are not your emotional bodyguards. All right. And a lot of us is falling out with people because we have given them the role and the responsibility of being our emotional bodyguard. What I mean by that is you're responsible for how I feel. And when you don't do your job, then I'm cutting you off. Well, they never hired for that job. They never um they never interviewed for that job or anything. You just gave that to them. And how many people are you making responsible for how you feel? You're responsible for how you feel. And if you notice that you're feeling unsafe around people, you notice that you're feeling again, I have to explain this what I mean by unsafe, because it's not the unsafe like somebody got a gun to your head unsafe. All right, that's not the unsafe that I'm talking about. Safe meaning I'm not hiding. I can say how I feel, right? I can experience this emotion, right? I can stand up. I can speak my truth, right? So it's certain environments that we feel safe to be us around. And then there's other environments and people that we don't feel safe. For some reason, our nervous system is like, don't do that, right? And we talked about the 3 levels of the nervous system. If you guys want me to post that, I'm going to post it in the Facebook group. So if you're in the group, go to the Facebook group where you can see those 3 nervous systems. All right. So again, you begin to organize your day around what makes you feel safe instead of what moves you towards your purpose. Before long, fear isn't just something you feel. Guess what? It's something you build into your schedule around. Listen, fear isn't always dramatic, you guys. Sometimes it's just daily. It's this activated daily. All right. Number 2, avoidance becomes autopilot when unchecked. All right. Again, first we build our habits and then our habits make us. All right. Now, this is something that you may have caught. All right. You notice that your family avoided the conversations that needed to be had. You notice that your grandma avoided some things. Your granddaddy avoided some things. You're in a relationship and your boyfriend avoided some things, or your girlfriend or your wife, or, you notice at work that people are avoiding things, right? And so you may have caught this behavior, or so you may have caught it, or you may have taught yourself to avoid some things because guess what? You just don't like conflict. So I'm just not going to talk about that because I just don't want to make this person mad, or, I don't think they're going to understand. However, you got there, avoidance becomes autopilot when unchecked. The first time you avoid something is a choice. All right. The third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the 10th time, the 20th time, guess what? It's a reflex now. You're avoiding by reflex. You're not even thinking about it. So eventually you don't even realize that you've been avoiding what? Your growth. You've been avoiding the opportunities that have come to you so that you can grow. You have been avoiding the paths, the doorways that have been opening, that the things that you have prayed for, right? Because you are looped in avoidance, right? So you've trained yourself to do it automatically. And when we've trained ourselves to do something automatically, we don't even notice it. You're not even noticing it. So unchecked fear becomes a default setting. All right. All right. Number 3, don't ask for permission, right? Patterns don't ask for permission. They just repeat. All right. This is the one thing about our sophisticated bodies, our, life, who we are. A lot of this stuff, your heart ain't asking you, can I be, your digestive system ain't like, hey, can I digest that food? Once you give it to it, it's going to do what it was created to do. All right. The same with your nervous system, right? That's creating a pattern. Patterns don't ask for permission. They just repeat, right? So you don't have to consciously agree to the fear-based routine. If it's not confronted, guess what? Your nervous system will keep repeating it, not questioned, no questions asked. I'm sorry. All right. So if it's not confronted, your nervous system will keep repeating it, no questions asked. Patterns don't care, okay, if they're painful. They care if they're familiar. All right. They don't care if they're painful or joyful. They're unconscious. It's unconscious. Your brain is the most unconscious thing. So it's not saying, oh, I'm not going to do this to you because I know you don't like that. It's like, I'm going to keep doing this because you keep allowing it to happen, right? That you haven't become aware of this pattern, and, and I'm just going to keep doing it because this is what I was created to do. All right. So if you don't disrupt the loops decides for you. All right. Number 4, you can't pray away what you keep rehearsing. All right. You can't pray away what you keep rehearsing. This is something that I had to learn, and I think it's a part of your daily journey. Listen, you can't pray for something that you keep doing. All right. You gotta activate, you gotta do something about that, right? And like the God, big God that's in you, in the divinity ain't just gonna come, take that thing away from you. You actually got to do something. Listen, you can be spirit filled and still feel stuck in fear based rhythms. Prayer invites power, but without pattern interruption, you're asking God to override what you keep repeating. All right. So you're not waiting on a miracle. You're reinforcing the loop when you keep doing the thing. You're praying, but then you keep doing the thing. Listen, prayer plus practice equals transformation. All right. Prayer plus practice equals transformation. But prayer without change is what we call spiritual stagnation. All right. Another thing, spiritual language can hide emotional avoidance. Listen, spiritual language, like I'm waiting for confirmation, I'm surrendering it all to God, I'm in a season of stillness, right? Sometimes this is real. All right. This is real for some people, but often this is where fear is wearing church clothes. All right. Not everything spiritual sounding is spiritually aligned, you guys. Discernment means asking, is this wisdom or is this avoidance? And you guys know that I have my Lex moment, right? And my Lex moment is my wisdom, right? I understand that in life there has been some wounds, so I'm constantly asking myself, is this decision made out my wise woman, or am I doing it from my wound? I don't have to judge it, right? But the awareness of that is so important, right? So a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, is this wisdom or is this avoidance? All right. Or is this wisdom or is this from my wound? All right. Another thing I want you to know, busyness can be a fear loop in disguise, always working but never moving. All right. Being constantly busy can keep you from confronting what the discomfort, right? Being constantly busy in what we call in the do stage. You're doing stuff. How do I do this? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? Right. This can truly be a fear loop, right? You say you're being productive, but really you're staying in motion to really avoid having to feel. All right. A lot of us don't like feeling, or we only want to feel what we want to feel. Right. So out of all the emotions that, God has blessed this divine body with, it's like, I only want to feel this one and this one and this one, not realizing that your body, though, has already been patterned to feel this one, and this one. All right. So even though you want to feel happiness, you may be feeling some apathy or dis-ease or disconnect because you've been patterned to feel apathy. You've been trained to feel anger and sadness. So you may want happiness and only want to feel happiness and feel like I'm going to do this to feel happiness, right? But you're never really experiencing happiness because you've been patterned to feel sadness or let down or this dis-ease, right? And so you end up feeling the dis-ease, which validates why you shouldn't move or shouldn't do a thing. And I'm saying you can feel all the emotions, all right? But you just have to become aware of the pattern, all right? Because and you have to be willing to be still, all right? Be still and let that feeling come up. A lot of us, and what's coming up in my spirit too, is that a lot of times, we have a storehouse of feelings, and we may be like, okay, I'm thinking about blocks, or I don't know, a line of people, right? So a line of people, and the first person represents sadness, and maybe the fifth person represents joy. But because you don't like the first person, you've put a block up. You like, no, you can't do that. I ain't gonna feel this. So you keep doing and doing and doing, avoiding speaking to, engaging with the first person. In this case, the first person represents sadness or anger or whatever. But because you don't want to feel that, right? You're like, I'm gonna do something to skip over to this fifth feeling or this fifth person, which represents happiness. All right. Now, the truth of the matter is, you really can't get to happiness or joy, which is that fifth space, until you allow, this engagement with this first person to happen. All right. Now, in your mind, you may think, well, if I engage with this first person, which in this case is sadness, you know, I'm just going to crumble down. You got this big story for why you're avoiding this feeling. And I'm like, no, because feelings only last 90 seconds, right? So just be still, feel the sadness and let it pass you, right? And then feel that second feeling and let it pass you, and feel that third feeling and let it pass you. Now, also know that happiness only wants to last 90 seconds too. All right. So when you feel it, it's going to dissolve, and just allow this line of emotions to come through you and pass through you so that you can continue to move in your life. All right. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. All right. So again, busyness can feel like a fear loop in disguise. So a lot of times we're staying busy. So in our doing, so we don't have to be present in our feeling. Listen, hustle can be a trauma response. Movement isn't always momentum, you guys. All right. Another thing I want you to know is breaking the loop starts with awareness, not shame. I talked about this earlier. This is not about blaming yourself for the patterns that you created or that you were given in survival. It's about noticing them without condemning yourself. All right. Awareness creates options. All right. Shame creates paralyzation or creates or makes you paralyzed. All right. So you can't change what you can't see, but you can see, and then you can choose. All right. But you can see, or when you allow yourself to see, you can choose and shift. All right. Couple of more things. Every loop has a lie that keeps it alive. Every loop has a lie that keeps it alive. Fear-based patterns are sustained by fear-based narratives. I can't handle failure. If I slow down, I'll fall apart. I'm not ready yet. Remember, I was telling you that's why we avoid these feelings, because we're lying to ourselves. We're giving ourselves rational lies. Like, if I let that sadness in, I won't be able to handle that. If I do that, then I'll slow down and I'll fall apart. So I got to stay busy doing stuff, because I know once I sit down, I'll just fall apart, and I'm not really ready for that. So we're holding back all of these emotions, and holding that back is really this fear pattern of avoidance. All right. To really break this loop, guess what? You have to break the lie that's powering the loop. All right. The loop is just a lie in motion, you guys. It's just a lie in motion. Last two, patterns are permissions. What are you giving permission? What are you giving them permission to repeat? All right. Every time you repeat a fear-based habit, you're unconsciously saying, yes, I allow this. All right. Whether this is silence, whether it's procrastination, whether it's self-sabotage, whether it's over-explaining, whether it's overthinking, whether it's whatever it is, right? Even on the great side though, right? So we can repeat patterns that are good for us, right? That's where we want to get to, where we're aligned and we build habits that support who we are and support our growth, right? And a lot of us are, what I say, stuck on the backside of our growth, right? Where we're experiencing silence, procrastination, overthinking, and not the front side of our growth, where we're experiencing support, love, joy, conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, right? Being able to co-regulate and things like that on the front side of our growth. All right. So whether that's, again, every time you repeat a fear-based habit, you unconsciously saying, yes, I allow this, whether it's silence, whether it's procrastination or overthinking, the repetition grants the permission for it to still exist. So I want you to ask yourself, what behaviors have I endorsed by doing nothing? Right? By doing nothing. All right. And last but not least, you don't need a breakthrough. You need a break in the pattern. All right. So again, this is back to that. We're looking for this big thing to happen. And it's just like a break in a pattern. You're not waiting for, this lightning bolt, right, to happen. You need a moment where you intentionally disrupt the loop with a new choice, with a new decision. I know for 30 years, I used to do it like this. I know for 40 years, this is how I responded. I know for 50 years, 60 years, this is how I responded. But today, in this moment, I'm going to go right. I'm going to do something different. All right. Listen, the pattern will only change when the rhythm is interrupted. And just an interruption can help you to start changing your life. All right. So your next level won't come from waiting. It will only come from disrupting. All right. All right. So let's get into our biblical wisdom so we can wrap the life lesson up today. Our biblical wisdom for today. I love this verse and I think it's well fitting for this. Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of the world, but be transformed from the renewing of your mind. The spiritual interpretation of this is you don't have to be who your survival mode trained you to be. All right. Transformation begins not with the leap, but with a rewire. All right. God isn't calling you to be perfect. This entity, this divine entity, is actually inviting you to be renewed. All right. This means a new pattern, right? A new pace and a new mindset. Again, do not conform to the patterns of the world, but be transformed for the renewing of your mind. This verse is not asking you to behave better. It's inviting you to believe differently. The patterns of the world is these survival loops, these fear-based decisions, these emotional and being on emotion and having an emotional autopilot, right? Renewing of your mind is really interrupting that, right? Interrupting the fear script that aligns with truth, right? And interrupting the fear script with aligned truth and embodied trust, right? So this is God whispering to you, you are not called to stay in a loop that you learned in survival. You learned that to survive, okay? But what got you here won't take you there. Listen, God said, I'm rewiring you for awareness, identity, and love. This is not about striving to become new. It's about allowing truth to disrupt that rhythm that you've lived in for far too long. All right. So we know that I'm going to bring a little bit of neuroscience into this, right? Neuroscience, because as a doctor, right? I really just think it's phenomenal how research in neuroscience is actually supporting, right, what the Bible has been saying, which is a part of why I bring in the biblical wisdom, right? Because a lot of what the Bible is saying, we're seeing it in how we move and how we think and things like that. So the brain runs on neutral patterns, right? Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity becomes what your default. This is called neuroplasticity, right? So you hear me talk about your brain's ability to rewire itself, right? So if you repeat fear, you wired it, right? So you're wiring that. But if you repeat truth, guess what you're doing? You're starting to reprogram. All right. So Romans 12:2 maps directly to neuroplasticity, right? The brain's ability to rewire itself through what? Repetition and awareness. Old patterns are old neural pathways, right? The brain conserves energy by sticking to what's familiar. Remember the motivational triad. What does the brain want to do? Conserve energy, right? Run away from pain and run towards pleasure. All right. So the brain conserves energy by sticking to familiar pathways. Guess what? Even if those pathways are toxic and fear-based, it's what the brain wants to do because it's conserving energy to what? Keep you alive. That's what it thinks it's doing. All right. So the rewiring on the renewing, every time you choose a new thought or a new behavior that's aligned with truth, right? With the divinity in you, right? You literally are creating new pathways in the brain. All right. So neuroscience confirms that repetition builds rewiring, identity-based alignment activates sustained change. So when Paul says be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, he's actually prescribing what we now know as the core of trauma-informed healing, you guys. All right. All right. The promise verse, Isaiah 43:19. Isaiah 43:19. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it's sprung up. Do you perceive it? All right. Listen, God isn't just fixing old patterns. He's inviting you to recognize the new ones. But if you're too used to fear, you won't perceive the breakthrough when it's available. All right. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it's sprung up. Do you not perceive it? That's Isaiah 43:19. Guess what? God isn't saying he might do something new. He already initiated the new. All right. This is why I say that healing is not something that you do. It's who you are. It's in your being. That's like if you cut yourself, the body is naturally going to what? Heal. right? The body is naturally healing when you eat food and it's going through the digestive system. The body is naturally healing when it's releasing old cells from your body, right? And you're getting new cells. The body is always in recovery, right? It's always healing, right? All right. So God isn't saying he might do a new thing. He already initiated this new thing, right? Every so many years you get new skin. Every so many years you get new hair follicle. Every so many months you get something new in your body. All right. So this process has already been initiated. So this isn't whether change is available. Okay. The issue is whether you're emotionally regulated enough to really perceive the change. Okay. This isn't about wanting a breakthrough. Okay, this isn't about wanting or waiting on a breakthrough. It's about awakening your awareness to what's already happening. I'm not hiding the new thing. You just been rehearsing the old one for so long that you can't even recognize it. So that's God's talking like this. And I'm not hiding this new thing that I've already introduced to your life, that I already initiated. I'm not hiding it from you. You just so used to the old thing that you can't even see the new thing or recognize it. Okay. The neuroscience of this verse is that the nervous system filters out new options when you're locked in survival. All right. To perceive change, you need to regulate, you need safety, and you need repetition, right, of the new behavior. So this verse speaks to what brain science calls perceptual bias. All right. Perceptual bias and intentional focus. All right. If your nervous system is trained to expect fear, if your nervous system is trained to for rejection, if your nervous system is trained for failure, guess what? Your brain will filter out opportunities in alignment. What does that look like? Okay, well, let me go down. New things don't feel safe to a dysregulated system, even if they're good for you. Okay, the reticular activation system is your brain's filtered reality base on what it expects. All right. So if it's used to fear, it will downplay peace and not even recognize it. What does this look like? When you buy a car and now you see that car everywhere. Okay. When you buy a car, now you see that car everywhere, right? That's your reticular activation saying, okay, I see this car now because I just purchased so many thousands of dollars on this car. And now I notice this car everywhere. And before I bought this car, I never saw this car before. Do you think that all those cars just magically appeared? No, they were always there, but your brain filtered them out until you got focused, until you focused on this type of car. All right. Again, your social media feed does this. When your phone catches a conversation, or when you go in, like you're looking on Amazon, or you're looking at a certain thing and then you start to see ads pop up, right? This is the social media or the algorithm really doing what your reticular activation system does, which is now showing you the thing that you're interested in. So that's why my feed on Facebook may look different than your feed, and your feed may look different than your kids' feed, right? Because it's only going to feed you what you stop long enough to look for, and then that's telling social media, or that's telling your the algorithm what you want to be, what you want to focus on or be entertained by. All right. This is so important for us to know, because a lot of things we're praying for, but we haven't prepped the mind for it. So it's happening, but you don't even see it happening because your nervous system is actually filtering it out. All right. So spiritually and biologically, we are wired to miss the new thing. All right. When we are stuck in old loops, all right, in old patterns. Does that make sense? All right. And this is why it's so important to have different conversations, to get the therapist, right? So you can start introducing new language, so then your eyes can start to see new things and your ears can start to hear things differently. Okay. So again, Romans 12:2, renewing the spiritual insight is renewal requires a new mental rhythm, not religious routine. And the neuroscience that supports that is neuroplasticity, actually enables new identity patterns through repeated choice. And then Isaiah 43:19 says that new opportunities require new awareness. And we know that the reticular activation system, right, the RAS, helps us perceive growth, not threat. All right. It has the potential to do that. But again, if you're stuck in those nervous systems that I talked about these nervous systems earlier, those three forms of nervous systems. Let me kind of go to them because I think that they're very fitting here. So I talked about these nervous systems um, earlier, and it was three, right? It was three of them. We talked about the ventral nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, and the dorsal nervous system, right? So the ventral nervous system was safety and connected. This is where your nervous system feels calm, creative, and brave, right? That's the God in me, okay? That part of your nervous system, that the ventral nervous system is really saying that, listen, you feel calm, grounded, present, connected. Your breath is steady, even when things are happening, right? Your heart rate is balanced. You feel safe in your body and open to others, right? This is where healing, creativity, connection, and purpose lives, all right? So spiritually, this is the God is with me. Everything is working for my good. And in emotional intelligence, this is what we call the integrity, right? Living in integrity, all right? Because it's creating win-win situations, right? I don't have to win and you lose. It's not combative. It's about community, all right? So your system feels supported and whole. And healing really can't start until you feel safe and social, all right? And then that second state of that nervous system is the fight or flight. And you've heard me talk about this: fight, freeze, or fawn, all right? Your body prepares what? To defend or escape. Why? Because of what you've been through, all right? So you feel anxious, you feel restless, you feel agitated, and you feel angry, all right? Your breath becomes shallow or even non-existent, right? You're not even feeling yourself breathe. Your body is actually just breathing, but you're not consciously taking a breath, which is why somebody probably would come to you and be like, breathe, and help you co-regulate, right? Through that feeling, right? Your brain goes into tunnel vision, right? Again, that RSV, you only paying attention to, right? The survival. What do I need to survive? You may push harder in this in this state, overthink and freeze and indecision, because this is where fear takes the mic. You don't feel safe, so you try to control everything. And then that last one, the dorsal state, right? You feel emotionally numb, right? Disconnected, hopeless, and withdrawn. Your body slows down to play dead. It's kind of like you just start to feel a level of apathy, disconnect, like you're emotionally froze. All right. You feel like you're giving up, not showing up, or just disappearing, right? This is where God feels, this is the zone where God feels so far away, even though God's right there with you. You feel like you're just alone and isolated. All right. This is where you're in emotional shutdown. And it is a trained way, right, that your nervous system is doing to preserve you, to preserve your survival or your safety. And we have to start moving from survival to thriving. All right. So the body doesn't respond to danger, it responds to perceived danger. And you are actually rewiring or rewriting a story for what danger is for you at this grown age of an adult. All right. All right. Does that make sense? All right. So these scriptures aren't demanding instant change, you guys. They are compassionate invitations to really step out of loops that were created to protect you. But now, guess what? They're limiting you. All right. God isn't far away shouting orders. This divine entity, spirit, right, is whispering from within saying, we can choose differently now. Okay. The old loop helped us to survive, right? But the new one, it will help us to thrive. All right. So the last anchor for this is that loops don't break emotions, they break intentions. All right. So loops don't break with emotions, they break with intentions. All right. Okay. Let's put this into practice. So today, if you want some action steps, um, before we do that, I want to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel at I Am Shaping Solutions. Make sure that you invite a friend to join the Elevating Life group if you haven't already. We're trying to get those subscribers up. All right. Now, here's what I want you to do. Identify one fear-based loop you've normalized. If it overthinking, people pleasing, stalling. Okay, write a pattern interruption, like what you'll do instead, and then practice that. Practice it for 24 hours. All right. Here's your journal prompt for today. What pattern have I been rehearsing that's been keeping me stuck in fear? All right. Your affirmation for today: I do not need to repeat what no longer serves me. I can rewrite my rhythm in alignment. All right. And then your intention for today: today, I break the cycle and step into, today I break the cycle and step into a new pattern of trust, movement, and clarity. And then if you want that bonus, every time you catch yourself in a loop, just say it out loud: this is not my rhythm anymore. All right. And then, I'm always going to give that call, that challenge, and that charge. So I'm calling, I'm asking, what pattern are you done rehearsing? All right. My challenge is, I challenge you to disrupt it intentionally in today. And my charge for you is, you don't owe fear your routine. All right. Go reclaim your life and go shape your life. All right. Listen, if this session resonated with you and you're walking away with insight on the day, you already know what to do. Drop a fire in the chat for me. All right. If you don't know, or if you don't need a hope, I just want you to know, you don't need, a whole new life. You need a new pattern. All right. And that's why Project Life exists. If you're not already a member, make sure you go sign up at sheetalittle.com/life. That's where you get the accountability partner, the coaching labs, and things like that to really help you shift and move. All right. Today's takeaway is, you're not stuck, you're just looped. And loops break with one brave decision. Listen, I'm so excited. I will be coming on tomorrow, right, on Sunday, to really explore the voice of fear. Okay, the voice of fear, when your inner critic sounds spiritual. When your inner critic sounds spiritual, I want you to remember this: if you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. I love you. I love you. I love you. I will see you tomorrow as we wrap up the release as we wrap up Release the Grip on Fear in this series. Why do I keep holding back? All right. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow for that life lesson. Till later.